welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my 2024 watercolor palette collection tour. I have a very large number of watercolor palettes, mostly because one of the things I do is review watercolor palettes, but also I work with some small shops in color development and all that fun stuff. So I've acquired a lot of colors over the years. So let's go through all these paints. We're going to start with my most used palette in the studio, which is definitely, without a doubt, the studio palette. If you've been around here for any amount of time at all, you've probably seen this palette. Over the years, it has grown quite considerably. It started out as a palette on a cookie sheet with little tape lines to differentiate the colors, and has grown into 4 and a bit trays, because now there's an overflow tin again, which means we are approaching needing a 5th tray. But my rule is palettes don't get another tray until they have filled at least 4 rows, and we are not at that point yet. So this is my yellows, greens, and the beginnings of turquoises. My rule for sorting colors has always been to follow the Tombow marker tracker sheet. It just makes my life really easy. I get to hold a color up to the sheet and go, like, where do you fit? I will also say nobody needs as many paints, but I do work with a number of small shops, and because I do formula testing and color development, if you're developing a color that uses PG50, that can either be a green or it can be a turquoise, and you need both colors to figure out which one you like better. So I've acquired a lot of colors over the year. You will notice that there are 2 half pans down here. I've had a pan go missing in the studio. I know that it exists because I have a swatch for it and I can't find it anywhere. So for now, the upright half pans mean that I am missing that paint. The upside down half pans mean that the next pan is a full pan and I don't want anything to move. So placeholders are upside down half pans, and missing paints are upright pans. These are my sort of pinks and purples and reds. They're quite nice. I really enjoy them. I really struggle with finding a red I like. My favorite red is actually a pigment that's been discontinued for a very long time. It's PR88, and it is an absolutely stunning red. Very few shops have it anymore, so when I see it, I do end up snagging it. I will say my other favorite red currently is Carmine, and I know of a couple small shops that about the time that Schmincke came out with theirs, they came out with their versions as well. So I currently have a small shop version in my palette. My rule with adding brands and mixing brands in my palette has always been that so long as the paints work well together, I don't care about mixing brands as long as I'm not doing a piece specifically for one brand. My other rule is that light fastness does not matter for my personal work. Yes, if it's a commission, light fastness matters, but 9 out of 10 times what I'm doing is in a sketchbook, and so light fastness doesn't matter and I get to play with whatever I want. So instead of going to the special effects palette, the next most used palette after the overflow blacks, there are many different black pigments. They no longer fit in the palette, so they live in their own tin. The next most used collection of pans are these. These, if you've been around here, you will know what is in these tins. These paints have a cult following in the handmade watercolor community, pretty much. These are 31 Purple Fish paints. I've had these, for the most part, for a number of years. That being said, I do subscribe to her monthly paint program, and so I acquire new paints every 2 months from her. So the 2 most recent guppies are actually tucked away at the bottom of this tin. The neutrals and her 2 shimmers. She makes quite nice shimmers. I just choose to have my 31 Purple Fish paints matte. That's what I prefer. So I will say that I've really slowed down purchasing paints in the past sort of 18 months, and I've really only added 31 Purple Fish paints and paints for videos in the past pretty much a year. So I will say that Kelsey, out of everyone in the handmade watercolor community and in big brands, does these granulating pinks and reds, that's the green ones, better than just about anyone I know. She can make things granulate so spectacularly, and it's so stunning. And I'm so grateful to have so many of her granulating pinks and reds from over the years. You can see just how much I've used pink salt. I will say that these paints are probably my most used paints. I don't travel with them. They do, at least in my climate, tend to shatter. I know lots of people have no issues with them. Where I live tends to be pretty dry most of the year, other than the couple weeks of the year that we have brutal humidity. And with those crazy swings in humidity and temperature, I find that on occasion, a couple of them shatter. But for the most part, they stay fine. And I do like that the pans aren't magnetized, because it means that I can stick magnetic tiles to my palettes and just move paints around at will. And I also create magnetized tiles for their swatch cards, which works really well for me. And it also means that I have a great storage spot for stickers from friends and from brands, which is always fun. Next up in the world of palettes that I love to use that maybe don't get as much love as I wish they did these days, this used to get a bunch more love, is my special effects palette. This is all shimmering ghosts, neons, some of them glow in the dark. They're so much fun. Most of these, though, are test colors, either from the shop I work for or from friends. And so I struggle with culling this palette in a very different way, because I feel like I can't cull it, if that makes sense. If you see the colors at the bottom here are super shifters, so they'll change in the whole spectrum, or they should. The lighting in here might not work for it. Well, this one. So you see, yeah, they're really fun colors. They're also, especially these bottom rows, really expensive colors. I will say almost all my super shifters are tester colors or colors that friends were clearing out from their own palette, and I paid very little for. Super shifters, though, the pigment itself costs between 5 to, I think it's about 5 to 8 grams just for the raw pigment. And so it is an expensive pigment to turn into paint. And then we have hollow ghosts, hollows that color shift, glitters with color, glitters, and neons, and then neons that have glitter in them. It's an extensive palette, but because they're mostly testers, I struggle with selling them. It feels weird to sell paints either from the brands I work with or from brands friends work with that never actually made it to market. So I hoard them, and I do use them, just not as much as something like my matte palette. Then there is the home of all things random. We have mini pans that don't fit in my current mini palette. For one reason or another, they just don't work with my current color setup. We have the only student grade paints that I've kept, which are the Pretty Excellent paints, which come in a plastic tray where I melted them out of the plastic tray and put them all into half pans so that I would actually use them. And I will say that I do use them in this setup, and they work much better for content in this setup. We have Addison and Sedgwick squirrels. These were both freebies from her 2022 advent calendar, I want to say. We have this lovely, I don't know that I can make it shift, but you can just see how shimmery it is. Flake color shifter from Blues Hues over on Instagram. I don't love the round pan setup. I find it hard to use in other palettes, but I will say she is the queen of custom mixed shimmers. Then we have 2 bottle caps. If you were here last year, you will know that I have had an extensive collection of bottle caps. I've slowly been selling the ones that I don't use off in Facebook swap groups for paints, because I'd rather they go to a home where somebody uses them versus stick around in my collection where I really wasn't utilizing them. So I only kept the solid matte one and the one that has the same pink as that's in the solid matte one. Other than that, I got rid of them. I really like the Artistic Isle paints. I just wasn't using the rest of the other bottle caps enough to justify keeping them. So I'm working on passing them along to new homes. Now we get to get into some of the more unique and fun stuff, because we have a selection of travel palettes. 2 from the same brand. These are both 3D printed palettes. One is filled with paint from Lighthouse Cove, who 3D printed the palettes. One is filled with paints from tubes that I did myself. I will say that even the 3D printed one is about to be customized with new paints, because there's a lot of empty space in it, and she no longer makes paints. So I'm going to end up topping mine up with some tube paints before my upcoming trip, just so that I can have some more fun stuff in it, because I do think it's a great size for travel, and I really want to be able to utilize it. It just needs some more colors in it. This, on the other hand, has been around for a while and has been featured in several videos. I just got paint on myself. Whatever. It's a great palette, and it has all the stuff that normally you wouldn't have in a palette, especially when traveling. So it's got Quin Gold, a whole bunch of different granulating colors. It's just got stuff that I adore having, but I wouldn't necessarily take half pans or full pans of, but I do love having access to when traveling. And you can definitely see there are pans that need to be topped up that I've used all of or almost all of. So this will be topped up before my upcoming trip. And this, I will swatch all these again, and I'll figure out what I can add to it, because I really do adore these 2 as travel palettes. And when you put them together, they're really not all that thick. They're maybe a little bit thicker than my phone in its case, which works really, really well when traveling. Then we have 5 more travel palettes. For somebody that doesn't travel, I acquire a lot of travel palettes because I really like them. We have this one from a second sale that The Art of Soil did a couple years ago. It is her B6. No, it's not. It's her 12B Walnut palette, which has a magnetic lid. I do wish it had magnets on the side, or a way for you to bulldog clip it like some of the palettes do. It doesn't, and I find that a little bit frustrating when not working at a table. That being said, its magnets are really strong. I had just wanted the palette, but the palette with paint was actually, I think, the same price as just a second palette. And even 2 years on, the paints are still so tall that it has a gap. So it's going to be a little bit before I've used all of them up and can fill it with new paints, but I'm happy with it and very happy that I bought it in a second sale. Which I have to say is probably my top tip if you want to try handmade paints. Stalk the person's Instagram page for a second sale or grab bags. They're a great way to try out handmade paints without spending a whole bunch of money up front, and you get to know if they work for you, if the formula is something you like, but also if they work with the other paints in your collection, because not all handmade paints play nicely with big brands, and not all formulas like each other, and it's important to find that out. This is another travel palette. This is all handmade paints and mini pans. I really like this set. It is super fun, and is so many makers in this tin. That being said, some of them like to pop out of their pans, so I don't actually travel with this set. It just lives on my desk. But I do like whenever I get to use it. I think it's really fun, and I like how little it is for how many colors it has. This one, on the other hand, is all of the little mini testers from over the years. So I have, pull it out, a fully metallic mini pan set that is great, other than the fact that these pans migrate. I put these pans in order. They do not stay in order. So they like to move, but what I do really like is that all I need to do is pack a silver and gold, and if I pack this set with a silver and gold, I have every shimmer color I could possibly want. So I really like this set. What I don't like about it is that the magnets aren't strong enough to keep the paints in this tin where I want them to be. So I need to figure out a better solution for that. But these are significantly smaller. These are 0.2 ml, these are 0.5 ml, and these are what most brands will send out to people on their team as testers. Some of these, actually many of them, have become shop colors for Laura of Cosmic Creations over the years. So I travel with these because it really doesn't matter if I use them all up. I can often get them replaced. So I will just toss these in here. So I'll probably toss them in here in the tin. I'll just move stuff around so that the tin fits. And then I'll have all these extra colors because these ghosts are really fun and they make super fun additions to night skies. And seeing as we're on this topic already, this is my sort of general mini metallic shimmer color shift hollow any shimmer you want palette. I love it for traveling. You can see how much I've used up some of these things. It is fabulous. The only thing I dislike about it is what I've said earlier, that the magnets don't hold things in place. Other than that though, it's great. And I'm really happy with it. It also combines like 7 or 8 makers. I'm not super picky with metallics about staying with individual makers, especially with something like this. Not everyone makes mini pans. Lots of the times they're just thrown in as freebies. And so this is quite a random color selection. It looks even more random when they're all mixed up, but for the most part, I just like having the ability to take a whole bunch of metallics when I travel so that if I want them, I have them. The other metallic mini palette I have is this. It is a very old Cosmic Creations palette. She no longer makes these. I wish she did because they were fabulous. It's a little bee palette. The holes were made out of air dry clay. They were super great, and I regret not getting one in a neutral color palette because I actually really like this. It has such a good weight to it, and it's just so much fun. There's something really nice about just like having everything together in this little pot and just like being done with it. And I do really wish that I had one in neutrals. So it's also about the size of my matte mini palette. This one I made a video on recently. This upcoming trip is going to be the first time I travel with it, but it is fabulous. I did a huge mixing chart for it to come up with the colors, and I really, really like it. It's got a color selection that I'm pretty sure only works for me, but is super fun. It has Potter's Pink, Windsor Red Deep. What else is in it? I believe Smalt Dumont's Blue is in it. Don't know what that green is, but it was a really fun video to put together. It was a really fun palette to put together, and I'm really excited to finally get to travel with it because I think it's going to be a super fun set to use. And then finally, before we head into palettes for videos, we have 2 sets. Oh no, we have more than 2 sets. Let's talk about things from second sales. Because we've got Beam and we've got the Art of Soil. I've already mentioned one of my Art of Soil second sales palettes before, but what I didn't mention is this ceramic one. And this was also from the same second sale. This is a mead and ceramic palette that I melted her mini EcoPods into. I will say the bag I got was very heavily brown and not a whole bunch of the bright colors. That being said, I do really like this, and I like that I melted them all down into a mead and palette because it's got a good weight to it, and it means that they're all together. Because I do find the Art of Soil paints do not play well with other paints, though they are super fun to use. And normally paints that don't play well with other paints would mean I wouldn't purchase anymore, though more Art of Soil paints are on my list because I really do genuinely enjoy them. Then we have Beam. Most of these Beam paints are also from Beam second sales. Beam does second sales a couple times a year. I'm lucky enough that I can pick up Beam paints at nearly every local art store to me, and some stores that aren't art stores, but I would say actually this palette and probably all but like 2 or 3 of these paint stones are from second sales. That means the palette was random and these paint stones are random. And I think I've only gotten a couple duplicate paint stones, which Mom has taken for her collection. I love bean paints. They work really well with other brands. I actually love pumpkin enough that I bought a half pan of it. And on occasion they do rare pigment stuff. So this came out at around Thanksgiving last year. It was Mayan green. I didn't actually own Mayan green from any brand, so I made sure to snag it. They do make fabulous paints. I do really enjoy them, and I will be acquiring more. And then finally we get into, nope, still one more palette. We have all of my watercolors paints. So these are all her mini pans, and I have the full Harry Potter collection up top, followed by a whole bunch of her normal line and then her gouaches. These don't get used a bunch, but I do like them. That being said, it's probably time to think about passing them along to somebody else. We'll see if they're still here in a year. Now we get into palettes for videos, or that I mostly use in videos. So the first two are the Derwent palettes. I actually got these for my birthday, and I would say these have been used more this year. The Derwent Graphitin, I feel like I finally figured them out this year, and the secret to them is you can't mix with them. You can't even mix them with themselves. It just doesn't work in my experience. But I feel like I finally figured that out this year, and it's been solid. I used them a couple times in the 100-day challenge video, and it was actually a really good experience, so I'm excited to use them again soon in something else. And then my second Derwent set I still struggle with. It is the Inktense mini pan set. I don't know if it's just the pan set I got. It's the number 1 one. For somebody who loves painting with inks, I really struggle with these. There's something about them that just doesn't work. For me, I tried using them in a 100-day challenge. I've tried using them in things personally that I haven't filmed. I can't get them to work. So I don't know that I'll keep them. I feel bad getting rid of them because they were a gift. That being said, it feels odd to keep something that I'm not using. So we'll see. Palettes for videos are an interesting thing. I don't actually end up purchasing that many paints for videos. Paints were purchased for the Schminke series, but other than that, most of the paints that I purchase for videos tend to be on clearance or are like from swap groups. I don't spend a whole bunch of money on paints, but sometimes you find something at a thrift store. And this year I found 2 paint sets at thrift stores that became videos. The first being this Reeves paint box, which I found a couple days after I found my mom's vintage Reeves paint box from school. And so I wanted to compare 2 vintage Reeves paint boxes to each other in a video. It was a super fun video, and I learned that I preferred my mom's, which has the metal tin and sort of a nicer color selection. This one has a metal tin as well, and I actually really like the tin for it. I just don't like the paints, so I might get rid of the paints in it and just make it into a half pan tin. I think it's tall enough that half pans will fit, or quarter pans, and it will have a new home. And then the other thrift store purchase for video was this set, which was in a bag of Sharpies and was still plastic wrapped. So I knew that the tubes were unopened, and because of that, we bought it. It's the Pentel, is it 18 pans? It is 18 pan set, and it was actually a lot of fun to use, and I think between this and then buying the modern one, I turned this into like 5 or 6 videos. It was really great. And I've actually painted with this one since that video series. I don't like the modern ones. The binder is different. They dry down differently. They've got a whole different look to them. The vintage ones, on the other hand, actually look really good on paper, I find, and don't have that like chalky look you expect from student grade, which is fabulous. Then we have a palette that I misplaced. I purchased it for a video, and then I lost it. And I lost it for a couple months. It wasn't until we did a studio reorganization when I moved my desk that we found it. It is the Stadler metallic set. When I bought it for a video, it was new. It had just come out. It is no longer new. It has been out for months. So I might still do a video on it. I don't know. I don't remember seeing another video on it, so I might do one. But I really wanted to try their metallic watercolors. Normally I dislike store brand metallic watercolors or big brand metallic watercolors. I really dislike the Daniel Smith and the Winsor Newton ones, and I don't really like the Curated one, though they are better than some of the alternatives out there. And I wanted to see how Stadler managed it because I do really like a good number of their products. And so I just wanted to give it a try. And then finally, we have my very first watercolor palette, which is an Angora watercolors, non-toxic, which does not mean they didn't stain terribly when you give this palette to a 3-year-old. But what I also love is that it was made in West Germany. I was born far after the fall of the Berlin Wall, to give you some context, which meant this stuck around on the shelf of a store for a very long time. And so I grew up with this palette. When I started to paint again in my late teens, this is the palette I used. And I decided that I was going to do a video where I compared it to its modern counterpart, which is also still made in Germany. It's a pretty similar color selection, different layout, but that video has yet to happen. So we'll see if that video still happens. I think it will, because I'm fairly sure they have not actually changed their colors. The more I look at these two sets, the more I go, I think these are the exact same colors. Maybe the purple's different, but other than that, I'm pretty sure these are all the same colors. So I really want to do a video on it. I think it would be fun. I do love how different, I don't know that you can tell, this is the new cat logo. It's going to focus on the cat. Focus on the cat. That's the new cat logo. That's the old cat logo. I love the old cat logo. The new one, the face on the new one's just a little bit off to me. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know which palette in the collection is your favorite. Were there any that surprised you? I have to say, these days, nothing much surprises me with my watercolor palette, and I'm definitely very happy and grateful for where it is. I get to do some super cool stuff with it. I am so grateful for the brands I get to work with on color formulation. It is such a cool job. And I'm so grateful for the videos I get to do on YouTube with color mixing that have allowed me to acquire so many paints over the past couple of years. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.